Okay, Umoya Ulight, Umoya Upright. I know you guys have missed Sahel Tuesdays, and I've been getting lots and lots of complaints on social media. So I'm hoping that those complaints we've been getting on social media will actually translate into you guys joining in the question and answer session. So today we have questions and answers, as you can see on stage. We're looking forward to the engagement. So we are good to go. As usual, I do not walk alone. We are hosted by Mam Kanyisi Liditri Shabalala, who teaches us our geopolitics. Good evening, Mam Kanyi.
Good evening, Moya. How are you?
We are well. We are well. We are looking forward to the engagement as usual. We know that there's a lot of developments, and I'm sure there will be certainly questions coming your way. Oladele, you know we go in order of ancestry here.
Greetings, everybody. Welcome to another session. We're looking for the question and answer session. Please get ready. We need your answers. We need your questions, basically, because we've been telling you stuff. So we need to hear from you. Let's engage. Let's talk. Speak to us. Looking forward to it.
Of course, people are also streaming from the Emerging Alcabulan, podcast that is working with us. So we do acknowledge those as well. Ndugu from the Kumbukeni Network. Guys, please follow that podcast as well. Good evening.
Asante. Karibuni. And just quickly, if you'll allow me, Moya, this outfit is by Carl Winston African Clothing. So go support them. I'll share the link later. But yes.
Standing. So I'm hoping people are ready to ask their questions. We did put it out that it's a question and answer session. They're asking if they're allowed to ask controversial questions, dears.
Yes. It's the
Fire
only way we
Come on.
For me, as long as the questions relate to the Sahel. Because it is Sahel Tuesdays.
And as long as they're respectful, because we are Africans. So.
Yeah.
Okay. I have a question, but it doesn't relate to the Sahel, you know? Okay. So I don't know if I'm allowed to break the rules a little bit. Because I've been seeing on social media a lot of, since all this MK stuff broke out, there's been the conversation around Morocco and why it was wrong for the Morocco funds to be taken. And I think a lot of people just talk according to what narrative they get taught, and they just parrot it, but we don't actually know why or who's Morocco in the bigger scheme of things. And in terms of our geopolitics, why should they not have taken the money? So I don't know, Mam Kanyisi, are we allowed to ask that question and then we'll come back to Sahel?
No, because the topic is Sahel Tuesdays, people. So, if we allow this question, we can allow other questions. Also, I'm on Sahel Tuesdays as Kanyisile, not representing MK. So I think it's very unfair to take Sahel Tuesdays platform and drag me into MK politics on it. I'm here as myself.
Okay. We were not trying to get the MK politics. We want to understand the Morocco politic, what it is. But it's fine if you don't want to share. If there's any questions from the audience, it's dead quiet in the audience section. So we can't have a question and answer question session without any questions. I don't know, people from the panel, do you guys have any questions?
Not questions.
I do actually have a question. How is the rest of Africa going to get out of the IMF and the World Bank? Because for as long as we are in that system, it's inevitable that we do one step forward and two steps backward. So how in the end are we going to be able to do it? I think for me is a resounding question, which we have asked in the previous podcast. I don't know if we have given it time enough to answer it, but yeah. Because if out of 54 countries, we only have 3 countries that are willing to do it in 2025, then it means we are going nowhere. I mean, they are a fraction of 54 in terms of percentage. The rest of us are beheld. And yeah, I had a conversation with someone today who said it's not going to happen. We are far gone into that system. So yeah, for me, that's my question.
I think, sorry, Oladele, to lose hope is to accept death. So let's just start with saying that. And so for us, that's not an option. To lose hope is to accept death. I know it seems bleak, but we've seen peoples in the past in history come from worse situations, even more dire situations, right? John Henrik Clarke is advised by, why am I forgetting his name? By one of his mentors, I'll remember the name, to go, when he asks to learn about his people, African people were now Ubuntu, he's told, go learn about the European history first, and then we can start African. So if you look at European history, and I encourage you all, I'll be doing the same, I'll continue digging in that, you will see that they were in a really bad situation. And imagine if you were living in those times, you would be thinking that way, right? There's no way out. People were eating people. They were not washing themselves. They were defecating in public. There was killing and all that, right? But they rose from that. So it's possible to rise from extremely dire situations. The thing is, do we have the will? Do we want to live on? And I want to live on. And I know my colleagues, my comrades with me on the panel want to live on. I'm going to fight even if I'm fighting alone. I'll be that crazy African fighting alone. So, and I know my ancestors have fought despite the challenges that they were facing. So we cannot be hopeless. We cannot give in to hopelessness. To answer your question, Mama Kanyisile, I don't like doing that. Yeah, Mama Kanyisile. Say no. Just say no. Just say no to the IMF, to the World Bank, to the West. Just say no. Thomas Sankara said no. Just no. I don't know what is so hard about us saying no. They say you're going to be sanctioned. Go ahead, sanction. You're not getting gold from us anymore. You're not getting oil from us anymore. Go ahead, bomb us. We're dying anyway. You're bombing us anyway. Let's join Congo. They're bombing Congo anyway. Congo is us, right? I just spoke to a colleague this morning about Congo because we are preparing for a celebration of Patrice Lumumba and Medgar Evers next week on their birthday, July 2nd. And they said, in Kinshasa, things are relatively okay, but in the East, and their families in the East, things are bad. They're starving. They're in refugee camps, and they don't have, the airports have been closed. There's no way to bring food in, and there's only limited, I'm not going to say which ways to bring food to them. They're not able to farm, and we know there are many, many factors. Again, it's a nuanced situation that contribute to this. The Africans cannot farm for themselves, despite the fact Congo, of all places, Congo, it is healthy land, healthy soil, and they cannot farm their own food. It's insane. That's rubbish. So we as Africans need to start seeing Congo's problem as our problem. We as Africans need to start seeing Sudan's problem as our problem. We as Africans need to start seeing our brothers in the United States, our brothers and sisters, their problem as our problem. We have to see ourselves as one family. I really am not, I will not even indulge you if you have this business of talking about FBA, or if you are a Nigerian who's talking about, I don't recognize Kenyans, or you're criticizing this and that. I don't have time for you, because you're keeping us under subjugation and exploitation and being killed. So we cannot lose hope, and all we need to say is no. Sanction us. Go ahead, sanction us. But no, and you cannot have resources. So, and another thing, as Nkrumah said, we need to all join. And as Sankara said, if the Kenyan president says no by himself, he'll be killed. If the South African president says no by himself, he'll be killed. But if all 54, or at least 50, or the main ones, the main ones with the big economies, Nigeria, Kenya, Ethiopia, South Africa, Ghana, if they join the Sahel, because the Sahel is already showing us the way forward, and say no to the IMF, that's huge impact. No to the West. I was thinking yesterday, sorry, my brothers and sisters, you caught me on a day. When Iran and the US were bombing each other, I was like, please, go ahead, bomb the bases in Africa. We need them out. Help us out, Iran. Bomb the ones in Africa, and make sure you allocate your bombs so that the effect does not harm the neighborhoods close by the bases. But please, Iran, if you need vengeance against the US, go ahead and do it in Africa. The base is there. We're tired of them. And apparently you have the resources to do it, so help us out. Please, Iran. Go on. I'm sorry, brothers and sisters.
What I was going to say, for me, there is hope. There is hope. There is hope. Look at these three countries, Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso. These are three countries who are telling us that it is possible. You know, we had an interview on Sunday, we talked about this. It is possible. I basically, 5 years ago, if you told me about the awakening that we have today and where we are in terms of our consciousness, I'd probably say no. But things are changing. The youth are awakening. Everybody around us people are dying for information. They want to know. There's a drive to actually know history, know also this. I can see everywhere, social media, people are, the stuff we put out there, people are gobbling it up because they want to know. So for that reason, there is hope. But what I would say is that we cannot leave our leaders to do this because most of African leaders are compromised. The change is going to come from the people. We need to drive it from the grassroots all the way to the top. That's the way forward. In your community, wherever you are, let's start engaging, let's start talking. Let's start engaging. The more we engage, they're going to get scared. They are going to get scared. And this is basically what they don't want to do, because you see what's going on in Kenya, how they infiltrated and killing people when they protest. But the more of us keep getting involved, we can overwhelm these people because we are more than they are. They haven't got the power we have as a collective, as a united people. And this is what we need to do. It is possible. In my lifetime, it is possible. A few years back, I never thought so, but from where things are right now, and with us, the elders, back in the youth, it is more than possible. Things are changing and things will change. And eventually, our leaders will have to listen to the will of the people. And that's all I have to say on that.
So there's an interesting question here, which is quite important. As a gay man, I respect Traor's mission, but his anti-LGBTQ stance hurts for queer folks who support his work. Please advise us on how we can navigate this without betraying ourselves or the cause. Excellent.
Yeah, I also think it's a very excellent question. For me, Ntigi, that's what makes me say there is a fundamental problem with Pan-Africanism. And I think which is why in the 70s, in the US, it migrated to Afrocentricity. The two are not the same. Pan-Africanism was all about the unity of Africans, fighting for freedom, which actually was not even freedom, because most of the time it wasn't clearly defined as breaking away from the colonial grasp entirely. So because it didn't do that, it didn't go to what were we pre-colonially, and I think that's in my book. So if your point of departure is Pan-Africanism, you are going to struggle with gender rights. Let's start there, because Pan-Africanists themselves suppress gender, by the way, except Sankara. I think that is why we celebrate him so much. He's the only one amongst the most written a book on women, and even understood that you cannot take me to a society where half the population is held in silence. That is his quotation. So, but the stance of most of these leaders, by and large, was Pan-Africanism, which is why Africa has been led by men predominantly up to now. And gender, if we are not looking at African women, we are not going to stretch gender to even include LGBTQI. So you will go with the narrative of Islam, of Christianity, of demonizing, and you will not even think that Kobupedi, which is Limpopo, Oladele, and Nduku, we say Kobupedi. You still have something called the village wife, which Islam and Christianity would never affirm. We have so many of these variations of sexuality. Njingambande kept the Chipados in her royal palace, and her power as a female monarch actually came from the Chipados, which were cross-dressing men, which is why the Catholic Church wanted them gone. They hated them above anything else in that society. So I think for me, honestly, Ntsigi, we need to put Pan-Africanism on the table, dissect it, and say these are its shortcomings, which is why we need Afrocentricity, which means put Africa in the center. And if you put Africa in the center, you're going to put Africa in the center in its totality, with its spirituality, with its culture, with its pre-colonial construct. Pan-Africanism is a reaction to colonialism. So truly, it starts our history with colonialism. Tell me any African Pan-Africanists of the leaders that we espouse that told us about Africa in 60,000 BCE. They never went that far. Colonialism was the starting point. And with colonialism were all these isms that are dividing us and detracting our struggle of unity, because, and Ndugu, I agree with you, our struggle is not only detracted by nationality, which is the borders, it's also detracted by ethnicity, by clan, by sexuality, which was a private thing in African cultures. That's why we didn't even name it. It didn't matter. So I hear the question, and I empathize a lot with that person. I mean, I was in Malawi last week, where the kwacha was devalued in 2012 by 33%, and it was devalued last year November by 44%, which means in a span of about 10 years maximum, it was devalued by almost 100%. People are queuing for sugar, and the concern of the Malawian president is to move the capital, is to move the embassy of Mali in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Honestly, is that what's a priority right now? And most of the embassies are still in Tel Aviv. But because Israel is occupying Palestinian land, Israel has asked countries to move their embassies from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Mali has complied, the first African country where people are queuing for sugar. Was that a priority? But then again, he's a Christian and a born-again Christian. So I feel that person, Sigi, and I hope I'm answering them. They can indicate by thumbsing up to you if they're getting the answer. But yeah, we should be patient with our people and understand that a lot of them are Pan-African and not Afrocentrists. I think I'll leave it there and allow the other panelists to chip in.
I'm actually so glad that you made the difference between Pan-Africanism and Afrocentricity, because yes, as you rightfully say, in Africa we didn't have gender, hence we don't have the pronouns he and she, which meant that Ubuntu encompasses everybody. So who people are having sex with was never our business, and in fact, in colonial times, people who had access to both genders were actually revered and considered quite sacred, because they thought it was a sacred thing for you to have the masculine and the female energy within you. So we actually used to revere them. It was a spiritual thing, and we can still see that it's a spiritual thing. Anyways, Nduku?
So, and you ask a controversial question, my brother, and please allow for controversial answers, right? Because I am certain, and because it's necessary. And I'll try very much to answer in a way that does not spread hate, because that's not the purpose. The purpose is to understand, to learn, and to preserve life, right? For me, the grounding principle is life preserving and the growth of generations to come. So I'll try and answer it from there. The first question, like, we should ask ourselves, instead of asking, we should ask ourselves why our brother Traore is taking this stance. Why, right? If someone can connect with him and ask why. And then we should also ask ourselves, given the way this movement, LGBTQ, is moving today, does it pose a threat to our community? What is the threat that it poses? As African people, we are life building. We are grounded on building generations to come. So procreation is a big part of our community. If we as a community make the trend and the norm what it is now, we risk our generations not coming in the future and us being extinct at some point, right? That is one thing that people might be concerned about. The other thing too, and there's evidence to this, is there are things being put in our food that are causing people who appear a certain way sexually to appear another way. I'll give a simple example. Our brother from Kenya, he's a doctor. We had him on, myself and Oladele, a while back. Oladele, remind me the name. Dr. Wahome.
Dr.
Right?
Wahome Ngare.
Yes,
Dr.
Wahome Ngare. And he said that at one point, one of the NGOs had introduced a malaria vaccination in Africa, and it was sterilizing the women. The ingredients in the vaccinations was sterilizing the women. So ask yourself, if it's sterilizing the women, what's it doing to their genetics that is changing that womanhood? What else is it doing that is changing that womanhood? And then as I see, I'll give an example. We were at an African event recently, and at one point, I felt like the number of gay men was higher than the number of straight men. And then I asked myself, why is this increase in this community only in a certain demographic? Why is it just Black men and Hispanics where we are seeing the increase? Why is it not in the white community? Similar increase. So this is, as human beings, we have to allow ourselves, for the sake of survival. And I'm saying, let's not hate. At one point, maybe it was natural, but clearly these forces that want to destroy the Black community have taken advantage of the situation. And now it is manufactured, right? It is medically manufactured. And there's evidence of that. And maybe one of these days we'll have, and the reason why we don't speak on these things as much as we need to is because we are scared of being canceled. Because you all out there are going to cancel us, right? If the gay community is going to be willing to ask a question like this, my brother El Regalo, and I'm sending you love so that you understand that my response is not out of hate, right? And I would not want to be in a situation where I had certain feelings that everyone was looking at as wrong, and I have to fight for myself, right? I know that's a struggle. As a Black person, right? We know that's a struggle. But we have to stop and ask ourselves these questions. Why am I seeing this predominantly in Black communities and Black men? Why is it there? Why am I not seeing it in white communities and white men? In the school where I was helping at some point, I'm telling you, most of the students were gay. Most of them. Now, that wasn't the case 5 years ago. So what has happened since 5 years ago? And then explain it to me scientifically is what I'm saying. And I don't want to use science hatefully as it has been used in the past. Let's ground ourselves in love and life-giving. Life-giving. Everything we do has to be life-giving. And then we understand what's being done. Because if there are entities that are socially creating this, if there are entities that are medically creating this, we have to fight them. And if they're targeting Black and brown people, we have to fight them. That doesn't mean we hate those in our community who subscribe to this lifestyle, but it means let's address these evil doers that are going against nature and solve this problem. Because I'm telling you, I'm noticing a difference that seems socialized, and I am having trouble having this conversation because everyone is criticizing me for being anti-LGBTQ. That's not the case. I want to have a critically, an informed and life-preserving conversation, so that we do not destroy Black community, so that we do not destroy the Black family. So that's my response on it.
Oladele, are you still gonna hold your peace? Guys, I don't think being queer is a lifestyle. I think we need to correct that. People are born the way they are.
Again,
and if
allow us to have our perspective is the point. I am saying it is being made a lifestyle. It has become a trend. That's what's happening with the propaganda in the media. So we have to learn how to identify that, while also saying that, yes, some people may have existed like that naturally, but right now it has been co-opted and it's being made a lifestyle.
So I hear you, my sister Ndugo. I think my concern there is, by and large, politics have been co-opted and used for corruption. We are not banning politics. You can't throw away the water, the baby, and the bucket. So for me, banning is the part that gives me goosebumps, because it means we are not having a conversation about this. We are not creating platforms and engaging. So I think while I agree with you that there is a certain element of sponsoring, but I'm also just saying it has predated our community of now. If you go to pre-colonial African societies, you'll find it. And people also fight me. I talking about this, it's so hard for me, because people come at me, as Ndugu says, people come at her thinking she is spreading hate. People come at me also thinking that I'm spreading propaganda, saying that I'm spreading propaganda. But people have not bothered to look at us in BCE. I always argue this. Don't look at us from 69, when Islam was already on our shores. Don't look at us after 1400, when Christianity came on our shores. Look at us before, and then judge us according to that standard, in terms of, because the argument of most people who come at me say, you claim to be a culturalist and preserving African culture and history, but you're not condemning this. And I'm like, but precisely for that reason. And I used to condemn it, by the way, until I came face to face with the hard facts of our history. I also was there. I used to condemn it too. So I think for me, the problem, Ndugu, of the person who's asked the question is the burning part, that we are not holding, you're not giving us a platform to hold a conversation about this and to say, okay, these are the laws we are going to pass to ensure the element maybe that you are talking about, of it being sponsored to kill the growth of our people. So I think maybe for me, those are the elements we should be addressing, like any other behavior that's emerging in our societies. We attack the negative part of it. We attack the undercurrent or the enemy within that activity. We don't attack everybody else and nullify everybody else. I think that was the concern. I think that's the spirit within which the question was asked, Nsigi, if I'm not misquoting the person.
I agree with you, Mama Kanyisile. And just to add to what you're saying, hopefully our brother Traore will open up for that conversation. But also someone mentioned in the chat, and I agree with them, that we should set up research projects and research centers that start looking into Western food and Western vaccinations to see what it is that they are doing to harm us. African grounded research centers to start looking at their vaccinations. All the vaccinations that people have complained, I gave this to my child, this happened, they are different, put it on the table, let's research what's going on with that. All the foods, I remember at one point and it's still happening, like our girls are maturing very, very early, right? They're getting their breasts and their menstrual cycles is starting very, very early, and it's being put towards the milk, the beef and everything. So let's take those items and start looking at them as Africans. That is where we need to move. Anyone who has the wealth, anyone who has the funds to support this, we need to open research centers, not a Bill Gates supported research center. African research centers that are not influenced at all or funded at all by white people who seek to uphold the false notion of white supremacy, so that we can understand, is this an attack on our community? Or is it something natural that's happening? And then how much of it is natural, so that we can have an informed conversation and not just make decisions because we want to be kumbaya. In the meantime, we are being attacked medically. So I agree with you, Mama Kanyisile. We need to open up space for the conversation and then invest in medical research.
There's the answer to your question about the IMF and World Bank. Is simple. We just don't pay the debt as part of reparations.
Okay, I thought my brother Oladele wants to come in. I'm scared that we are leaving him out. You know, the whole IMF debacle, it's actually not just about debt. That's what concerns me. And I'm not sure, maybe we do need to have a focus just one day on the two institutions, because it's not just about taking debt, it's about the whole economic system. I put it to you that there is no African country that has adopted capitalism currently. And capitalism is no longer capitalism, by the way. It is neoliberalism. So there is no African country that has adopted neoliberalism that will see development. That I put to you. So the IMF and the World Bank are simply tools in that equation, but it's bigger than the two of them. It is the whole economic system, because once you adopt neoliberalism, you are going to open yourselves up to liberalize your economy. Once you liberalize your economy, you're actually saying your local companies are going to compete equally with the multinational companies that have been doing this from 1400 when Europe adopted capitalism. So in the end, it just means death to your local companies, and it means you are going to be importing more than you are exporting. So even if we can stop paying debt, it does not translate us to being exporters. We are still importers more than we are exporters. We are still deindustrializing because local industries are killed because they cannot compete with the foreign incoming industries. So it's bigger than that for me, actually. Yeah, I think I'll leave it to my other two panelists.
Yeah, in terms of the IMF and the World Bank, like my sister said, I was having this conversation as well on Sunday. I think the system, the capitalist system, which has now become the neoliberal system, Africa needs to do away with it. This is basically the work. This is what we Africans need to do. I don't know what we're scared of, but capitalism, is basically what's strangling Africa. It's basically, they built this to basically strangle Africa. Capitalism is strangling Africa. Africans do not understand that the system is basically used to steal from us. How can, like Maponga was saying the other day, the dollar is printed about 18 cents is what they used to print a dollar, 18 cents. And you bring that dollar to Africa to buy our resources. 18 cents, that dollar is worthless. What is it backed with? Nothing. It's a piece of paper. And you bring that dollar to Africa to buy our resources, our gold, our coltan, lithium, you name it. And at the same time, you devalued our currency. So our currency does not match yours. So where's the equity? Where's the balance of trade? And you're telling me that this system makes sense? It doesn't. And this is where African leaders need to wake up. This is the kind of economic system that's basically, it's dooming Africa. It's killing Africa. And I will see economists come on and talk rubbish about this balance of trade. There's no balance of trade. There's no equity in trade within Africa and the rest of the world. It does not make no sense. And logically, when you think about it, just think. It makes no sense. So trying to defend it, and this is the miseducation of Africans, because you've basically gobbled up the Eurocentric education, and then you'll be spouting what you've learned, thinking it makes sense. It does not make sense. So Africa needs to get away from the system. We need to build our own. And I always say this, we Africans are so lazy. We easily like to fit into systems that are built, that are working against us, instead of us doing the work that's going to build the systems and structures going to develop Africa. This is what we need to do. If we don't do this, guys, for the next 50 years, and I hope not, our children will be saying the same thing. This system, capitalist system, is never, ever going to save Africa. We need to get rid of it. We need to build our own systems, and let's do for ourselves. Be more than capable. We are more than capable of doing this. What are we scared of? I'll leave it there for now.
What was the question? What was the question regarding the IMF? Okay, I found it. Nsiki, you want to move on to this one, or you want us to go to still speak on the IMF?
No, do you, babe? Do you?
All right.
Ndugu, just quickly, if you are stepping
I'm seeing
off,
that, yeah. Mm-hmm.
If you are stepping off, just give me a quick 1 minute. You know, in 1982, the rand was 1 to $1. And if at all it fluctuated, it was R1.32. Why is 1982 important? That was the height of the boycott of the South African government. I mean, they couldn't trade with people, they were boycotted in sport, but because it was a protected economy and not a neoliberal economy, which means opened up, they survived. We came in 94, we liberalized. Where's the rand now? I just wanted to give that example. Sorry, you can take it over, Ndugu.
All right. I will speak on the IMF, but as you keep that up, Nsiki, and please keep it up so that I can keep my thoughts straight, because I am walking a tightrope here. My brother El Regalo, this is why we don't have the conversation, and it's not going to help if we don't have the conversation, because I give my answer and I explain to you that I'm giving it in love, but this is your response, that we are throwing stones and not giving you love. I literally said I'm giving you love, and we need to sit and have a conversation and do the research to see whether there is something else going on beyond the natural aspect of this situation. So this is the problem. This should not be your response. This should not be your response. Your response should be, okay, I'll come to the table, let's have this conversation, because we said we're literally loving you and preserving your life. I said life preserving, which means I will not kill you, I will not harm you. But this is your response. And therefore, we don't come to the table because you will attack us in an unreasonable way. Because unreasonable, why? It is not reasonable that a person who explained that they love you and they want to preserve your life gets this response from you. Okay, moving on to the IMF. I agree with my brother. To get out of the IMF and the World Bank is simple. Selala, oh my goodness, Mama Kanyisile. Is that one of the South Africans' name? Do I need to have a click?
Which one?
His last name.
Who?
Tulawane, or is that Shona? Anyway, look at the name if you can see the comments. It's written Tlouane.
I can't. I'm doing this.
So, my brother, if you can write it in syllables, how to pronounce your name, that would be very helpful because it's important. But my brother Selala, I will use Selala for now because I can say it. You're right. It is very, very simple. We know what the risks are to saying no to the IMF and the World Bank. But if we stand as a united people, these entities are powerless, right? If we stand as a united people and bring all our forces and have strategic relationships with those who have the resources we don't have, that's another thing. Right now, China and Russia are partners who can be strategic partners for us in our pursuit of liberation. So we sit down together, we analyze the situation, what the risks are, what opportunities we have, what resources, what possible strategic partnerships are available, and we start moving towards that. And I agree, we should say no to paying the debt, because this is nonsense. For a community, the West, who take resources out of Africa in the trillions daily, in the trillions. During Mama Kanyisile, actually, they had a mock tribunal last week, and it's on Kumbukeni. If you go to Kumbukeni, you'll see the Africa People's Tribunal, the IMF and World Bank policies, right? And I forget the organization that coordinated this. Mama Kanyisile, you can speak to it when I'm done. But they had one, and the points that were given were amazing. They had a great debate. They brought their indictments, right? People's complaints against the IMF, and the person who was representing the IMF, they're playing the role just to have IMF represented. They're not with the IMF. They are an African person who's not affiliated with the IMF, who was, for the purpose of the conversation, representing the IMF. The questions they also brought are important to understand that might be the way the IMF responds if we actually have a real tribunal. So watch that and see what is said there, and how our brothers and sisters, even young brothers and sisters, are thinking about this topic. Very, very informed, very well-educated young people who are looking at this in a critically analyzing this, using the facts, using logic, and life-preserving methods. I say life-preserving because some of the testimonies that were presented, they were talking about what's happening in their community that's affecting their economies, which is resulting in deaths, which is resulting in poverty, which is resulting in starvation. So all that was presented. We must take Nkrumah's advice, Lumumba's advice, Sankara's advice, Malcolm's advice, to unite as a people across the globe so that we can fight this one enemy that has persistently been at war with us, even when we don't realize that we are at war. We are at war. If your lives are under threat, you are at war. Yeah, so I agree with you, Brother Selala.
Thank you, Silala. I hope you got that. I see this topic is quite, people want to engage. Bayard Rustin was a gay man working in the civil rights movement with Dr. King. Everyone knew he was gay, but that did not prevent them from working towards a common goal.
Let's have a conversation behind closed door. I'm done. Feel free, Mama Kanyisile, but I'm done on the topic.
Yeah, I think it's basically what I said before, Ndugu, that for any area of life, as long as there's no platform for engagement, it becomes a problem. The person who posted that, I'm not sure if they had my answer. It's not new. This has been happening, and there have been activists, there have been freedom fighters, there's been martyrs from any sexual orientation. So I don't know how to put this in a manner that makes them feel part of us. I have counted since the arrival of Islam in 639 to 2022. I think you're talking about 13 centuries, if not. Oladele, you can count for me quickly. A century is 100 years. So we are counting from the 7th century, because the century is always ahead of the year. Islam arrived in 639, Christianity in 1400, but just count from 639. It's how many centuries? I think I counted before. It should be 13 or 14. If it's 14 centuries, understand we are talking 1,400 years. If it's 16 centuries, we are talking 1,600 years. So please understand, that's 1,600 years of demonization, which is the same as the position of the African woman, by the way. The African woman is the most downtrodden on this planet. We are not restored. We are disrespected by our own. we are disrespected by the white male, the white female, then the Mongoloid female, the Mongoloid female, that's white, Caucasian, that's Mongoloid, that's Arab, by the African male, because there are only three races, Negroid, African male, then us. So virtually everyone stands on our head and on our shoulders. And I, like Sankara, wish to live the day where I see everyone just fall off our shoulders and our heads so we can breathe. So if you're an African woman and you're in these spaces, you can't take the point of departure that says, oh, but African women are not fully restored, and I don't see that leader restoring African women. If they are 95% doing right, there's a 5% they are not doing right on. I'll walk with them and work on them because, as Nduku said, we need the unity that we can get to get started and get somewhere. And maybe we are not going to get 100% perfect leader that embraces everything that we are about, as Wanabuntu, as Ndugu says we are, as Abantu for us in South Africa. But if their strengths for me are at 90% going up, I'll walk with them and hope that with time, they're also human, they will get to the 100%. So yeah, I hope it answers the person, Nziki.
Can I add something quickly, Nsiki, because something was said that should be addressed. The comment by El Regalo regarding today's leaders not even wanting to work with gay people. If you can please put that up. This is not factual. At least from what I'm witnessing and from what a lot of us are witnessing, it's not factual. From what we witnessed in both President Obama and Biden's governments, it's not factual. So predominantly now in school education spaces, in government spaces, because I was in government when we, the Black employee resource groups, were having conversations, very, very heightened conversations with the LGBTQ group. Because within the LGBTQ community, they discriminate against Black people. I don't know if you know that. Within that community, the white majority in that community discriminate against Black people. So we were having those conversations. Like, you know, if you're LGBTQ and a member of the African community and you're not standing up for the Black man, the African woman, their rightful feminine role, their rightful masculine role, and the African child, be quiet. Move aside. Don't ask me to stand for you. If you're not standing for the liberation of Black people, African people globally, step aside. Don't ask me to stand for you. Because this is nonsense. It doesn't make sense that you ask me to see your humanity while you're not seeing ours. So that's where I draw the line. If you are a member of the LGBTQ and you think that African people should be liberated, I stand with you. And you're willing to come and fight in the front lines, I stand with you, right? But I will say, in the education field, a lot of us who have the views that I'm sharing right now, who want to have the conversation, are losing our jobs, cannot get hired because we're being called anti-LGBTQ. This is happening. So don't say that these leaders in America right now, if your stance is against LGBTQ, or at least you want to have the conversation, you're asking questions that they don't tolerate, you're losing a job. So the discrimination is against us, not you. It's against we who want to have the conversation and understand if there's an attack on us. It is spreading in the United States, where you can't get a job if you ask, is something going on? If you say, my religion says this, I'm uncomfortable supporting, right? You have students, they'll come to you, one day they're feminine, the next day they're saying, I'm transferring, changing myself to become male, I'll go by this name. You're Muslim, for example, this goes against your religion, right? These are two tough conversations. You explain to the child, my religion does not allow this. You can say what you want to say about religion. We've had those conversations. Go to Kumbukeni and find them. So if you want to find my stance on it. And instead of having that conversation, that person is fired because they said their religion is not for it. They didn't even show hate to the child. They continue to show love to the child, and the child loves the person. There's that going on, but they're fired. And making it worse, they can't get a job anywhere else. So you tell me who's discriminating against who. Thank you.
Tense topic.
Yeah, very. And
Yeah,
let's
extremely.
let's let's stretch it, Nsigi, if you agree. And please, because it's Sahel Tuesdays, let's always remind people who tune in now, why are they now suddenly talking about LGBTQ? I thought the topic is Sahel Tuesdays because somebody asked that how do we support Traore if he has banned LGBTQI and I belong to that community. So if you tuned in while we are talking, please, that's why we are engaging this topic. I think Nzigi, I would also stretch it by saying to give a fair and balanced approach to this is, 5 million Jews were killed between 1939 and 1945, and maybe even earlier before the launch of the actual war, maybe as soon as the Hitler Socialist Party took over in 1933, already killings were there. So maybe, let's say 5 million people, Jews were killed between 1933 and 1945. There's a name for their pain and their death. It's called the Holocaust. And you can't even begin to undermine that pain. You are going to be labeled anti-Semitic. Now we have a name for the pain and the suffering of LGBTQI. It's called hate crime or the hate law. Guys, we still have no name for the pain of slavery, for the name of colonization. We struggle if you are Chewa, you explain it from how Chewa understand it. Nigerians describe it their own way. Because there's still no recompense. There's still no, I'm looking for the word. There's no repentance because racism still continues unabated in the global financial architecture, in the global political architecture. That's why we are not in the Security Council. We are the told and not the teller. That's why I even say, why are we even fighting to have a voice in the Security Council? We must just abolish it so that everything goes to the General Assembly where there's one vote, one country. So racism still continues. That's why there's no name for our pain. You cannot prosecute anyone for undermining our pain. That's why people can come out in South Africa and say colonialism civilized us. Imagine the pain we suffered from colonialism. But you can't label them anything because there's no label. So I just want to say to the LGBTQI, I think we have moved a lot, and where there are spaces where you still feel excluded, men understand people are developing, they'll get there. But at least there's a step ahead. We have begun to have a name for your pain. And if you belong to LGBTQI and you're African, be worried that there's still no name for the African pain as yet. So yeah, that's the stretch I wanted to take it to.
If I'm allowed to stretch it a little bit further, and there will be tensions in the room rising. When we have this conversation of us and them, it almost feels the same way that when you question white people about their privilege, how white people get defensive, and then they're like, no, but we, and it seems as if they are the standard. We'll let you in if, and it feels as if, why do heterosexual people feel as if they are the standard and that gay people need permission from them? So for me, I find it hard to not hear the same racism when white people get defensive when we call it out, but when the queer community calls us out, we sound exactly like white people actually when they defend racism. So I still feel that who people sleep with is not our business. While I agree that there are genders in this world that are designed to destroy the Black nation, but there are people who are born gay, and it is what it is, and they were created that way. So who are we to be the ones now who are saying who is good enough to be in the Pan-Africanist movement?
So actually, we are not like white people in our response, because we have said we are willing to have the conversation, and this should be the last we talk about this, because there are many other things that we should talk about. We've said we are open to the conversation behind closed doors. Let's move to that. But we're not like white people in response to this, because we're saying we love you, we see you, you're one of us. beginning. We're not doing the them, us. We're not doing that. We're not saying we are superior to you. We're not saying that. And we're not using that concept of us being superior to you to deny you jobs, to deny you access to homes, to deny you resources. So we're not like white people. Please do not even dare compare us to that evil, right? In the way it moves against us. So we are showing you love and saying we are noticing something different in our community. Let's stop and understand the forces that have come against the Black family. Can we sit and have a conversation and understand who has been socialized, what has been medically affected, who has been medically affected, and who hasn't? Look at the vaccinations, do the research, see what in them might be causing this, right? So that we have an informed position as we move forward. But like I said, everything we do should be grounded in life preservation. That right there is anti-Western way of seeing things. Their way is death. John Perkins himself, a white man, said the culture they live now is a culture of death. We are promoting a culture of life. You cannot compare us to white people in this conversation. Thank you.
My thoughts, guys, because I've been quiet.
Finally.
My thoughts. We have a massive, massive battle on our hands. We have a massive battle. And the reason why I don't get involved in this is because we get distracted. Like Nziki said, your sexual orientation is your business, private. You are more than welcome to do whatever you want to do. That's your prerogative. But guys, for me, this is another distraction that takes away from the topic that we need to focus on. Because we've got all these divisions all over the place. It could be racism, it could be ethnicity, it could be language, it could be anything. We have all these divisions. I don't want to do no division. I just want to focus on the bigger issue, which is basically Africans unite. Let's unite against the scourge that's basically banging our heads together. That should be our focus. Sexual orientation, it's your business. But, like I said, I'm not focused on that. But we have a bigger issue. Let's focus on how we can unite to get rid of the scourge that's basically dividing Africa economically, socially, our food, our security. Africa's not safe. Let's focus on that. And today we're talking about we focus on the Sahel. These guys are showing us examples of what we can do to bring change to the whole of the continent. Let's focus on that, guys. Otherwise, we're gonna be fighting each other, and our kind of infighting is basically what they like. Because they see we're not uniting, so we need to unite. That's my thoughts, guys.
I don't know if anyone wants to pitch in. We're in the last 2 minutes of the conversation, guys. It's quite a busy time. So, and we're on here from 8 till 9. So if you've got any further questions that you want to wrap up, or maybe
there's a couple of questions. There's a couple of questions there, Nziki. The thoughts about the Black American elites.
Yes.
Yeah.
Those.
But as you get those, I will say, Kumbukeni had a session with our brother, Dr. Kimoni, who recently went to Burkina Faso. So if you want to learn more about Burkina Faso, visit Kumbukeni and see that broadcast from this past Sunday.
There it is. Any thoughts on how silent the Black American elites, those in Congress, etc., have been regarding the AES and the surge in Pan-Africanism on the continent? Oh, the elite are panicking everywhere, the Black elite. I don't know who wants to jump in there.
For me, sorry, Mama Kanshile. For me, it's a yes, massa situation. Yes, massa. Yeah, that's basically it. Massa, you're sick, I'm sick. That's basically the situation there. They do not want to upset the paymasters, because basically every African country, every African man, every African woman should be supporting what the Sahel people are doing. So if you don't support them, that means you're complicit and you're compromised, because we're talking about African liberation here. That's what they're doing. So these guys are standing up. It's basically these guys are putting their lives on the line to actually give us an example and be a catalyst for the change that we need to see all around the world. So if you're not supporting them, whatever you are, even in the African governments, because 53 African governments are quiet, the elite in America are quiet, the elite in the UK, whatever you are, they're all quiet. Why are you quiet when a 37-year-old man is telling you guys, we can do this, join us? What's holding you back? I'll leave it there.
Moreover, why are you quiet when a 37-year-old son of yours, because he's still young compared to 60 or 70-year-olds who are alive in Africa? Why are you quiet when a 37-year-old son of yours is being killed? I mean, there's been 22 attempts on his life. Why are you quiet? Why do you see that as normal? But also, for me, even to use the term African elite is itself an African. I took a photo alongside Sankara's car at the opening of his memorial. Guys, do you see the car Sankara drove in? My God. It's just something that took him from point A to point B. So for me to even say African leadership elite is, I don't know, it's doesn't go together. It's like saying the holy devil. It's just two things that don't go together in one sentence. So the fact that African leadership is elite is the same reason they will not embrace the Sahel. Because the Sahel is not about elitism. It's asking them to forego all the back room monies that the IMF and the World Bank and the OECD and all these corrupt transnationals are paying them so that they can take loans that in China, so that they can open our economies to transnational companies that kill our local industry, so that they can agree to devalue our currencies, so that they can tell us we need Forex. So the Sahel is not about that. So it's taking away their elitism and it's reminding them that we are African and basically we shouldn't be having elites amongst us. I think that would be my response. So I agree with my brother Oladele.
I agree with both Oladele and Mama Kanyisile. And just before I make my comment, fun fact, it's been 37 years since we lost our brother Thomas Sankara, and Traore is 37 years, whatever that means to you, for those of you who observe African spirituality. This is the problem when you see yourself as American first and not African first. If you see yourself as African first, you will defend Africa. But if you see yourself as American first, you will defend America. If your interests are America's interests, you will always defend America. But if your interests are Africa's interests, that means Africa's well-being, the people of Africa globally's well-being, then you will not support America. It's as simple as that.
All right. Unless anyone else has got any closing thoughts, but it looks like there's no more. Oh, there is just this one question from Lifika. Some leaders like Botswana president seem to be following the Sahel trio's lead. What does this trend signal and what reforms should they focus on?
I sound controversial always when I answer on Botswana. Remember, I campaigned with this party because there's a favorite daughter of mine there who's become a deputy minister. Until I see on the news on SABC one cold morning, which will bring sunlight into my heart, I switch on SABC and it says the military base in Botswana shut down. They given 24 hours to leave. I will say, yep, they are walking in Traore's footsteps. Until that happens, I don't believe it, because those are amongst the first things that Traore did. And he knew as a military man what it means to have foreign base on your soil. You know, I always say, I don't subscribe to Mandelaism. I actually believe that we are in the neoliberal economy because of a lot of the yeses Mandela gave where he should have said no. But I like Mandela for one thing. Mandela always argued, it does not matter how far we fall, we can never fall to a point of allowing foreign military bases on our soil. So, yeah, that's my response with Botswana. But how
you noticed? Oh, sorry.
Sorry, continue, Nsigi.
No, you know you're the elder, so continue. I'll wait till I get a chance.
No, I was saying maybe to answer the latter part of the person's question, how do we get more leaders to follow the Sahel trend? People, let's vote right. I've always argued this. You cannot vote for someone who has never proclaimed himself a Pan-African, which me and Sidi have said here, and Dugu have said it, and Olari have said it. Pan-Africanism itself is a weak doctrine because it's far surpassed by Afrocentrism. We are voting for leaders who have not even declared Pan-Africanism, let alone Afrocentrism, but we are expecting Afrocentric policies and doctrines. It cannot happen.
Guys, sorry, they tell you exactly what they're going to do when they campaign. They make it clear. They tell you exactly what they're not going to do. So you know what you're voting for. So why do you keep, why do you keep backing the same people who keep giving the same crap every time and expect change? Excuse my language. It's pretty obvious. They're dumb. We're dumb. We're as dumb as each other because Tweedledee tweeted dumb. We're following each other. That's all I've got to say, guys. If you want change, you choose a different. You basically choose something different. You're not going to get change if you keep following the same thing I've been following for the last 60, 65 years. Same thing. How do you expect change when you're not changing? Anyway, that's my final comment today, guys. It's been a pleasure.
I agree. One of the things that we need to have, and this was said by Sheikh Anta Diop, Black Africa, I think that's the book where he said this, the 14 or 15 steps to African unity. There have to be terms of agreement for the unity, right? The Sahel has started, and I'm certain they're putting together terms of agreement. And one of the terms of agreement should be, you cannot be a part of us if you have foreign military bases on your land. Because that puts us at risk. That's as simple as that. So we don't even need to ask, do we think Botswana is leaning towards, if you have a foreign military base, goodbye. The conversation is not even being had. Like, ciao, goodbye. That's it. And then to address my brother, Itumeleng Mafoto. I hope I said your name right. I wish I could comment, but I might lose my bread. This is unfortunately the position of a lot of our people. We cannot have reasonable conversations because this society that we live in now, that we have allowed to take control of us, is a canceling society. Because it's not life-giving, right? It takes away your livelihood without even thinking how it's going to affect you and your community. Because this society is not life-giving. Because this society wants to continue upholding white supremacy. So anything that threatens it, even from a distance, like LGBTQ, right? Because a lot of white people are in that community, like LGBTQ. Anything that threatens white supremacy, they're going to attack and make sure that you do not have access to resources. So I empathize with you, and I empathize with a lot of you. And even as we speak, myself, Mama Kanyisile, lost our employment because of how we speak. And we lost our homes because of how we speak. But we continue the fight because who do we expect to take that risk for us? And how selfish would that be to do that, right? Who do we expect to be the one who gets fired to fight for us? That's the position we took. Now you can choose that for yourself. And then, like I said, we can't lose hope. How long do I want my people to be persecuted? How long do I want? I told about the story of the brother I spoke to this morning in Congo, talking about he's located in one area that is relatively good, but Kivu, they're starving. His family is starving. How long will I stand by while that is happening? So we've decided to take the risk. We have paid dearly for it. Our families, our children, like we struggle in those relationships because the children are suffering because of this. And when children suffer because of choices the parents take, sometimes they blame you. So we're dealing with a lot of mental ish, but we're still focused on the work and defending our people and our liberation. So I empathize with you, my brother, my sister. The good thing about African names and African culture is you don't even know whether it's a he or a she. Look at that. We can have that conversation after all. I empathize with you and anyone else who's in a position where they really, because it's your African self, it's your life-giving self, that your spirit that is telling you, say something. And that existence of having that awareness and being in a space that doesn't let you say that does a number on your mental psyche, does a number on you. And my advice to those of you who haven't found a way to deal with it, get therapy. That's what I did. Get therapy, definitely get therapy. And like I have said before, if you're a Mwana Ubuntu, you cannot get therapy with a white person or someone that's not a Mwana Ubuntu. And a grounded Mwana Ubuntu, not like the members of the Black Caucus. Someone who's grounded in Afrocentricity, that's who you should get as your therapist, because they can relate to the struggles you have. That's why I'm not discriminating. I'm just saying you can't be talking about your mental issues with someone who doesn't understand your mental issues and who might worsen them by triggering you. Thank you.
Thank you. And we were about to wrap it up anyways. I think Mam Kanye did say that she's got a meeting at 9 o'clock, which is probably why she jumped off. Thank you to everybody who joined us this evening. Guys, remember to subscribe to the 3 podcasts that are streaming this, Moya Podcast, Kumbukeni, and the Emerging Al-Kabilan. And it's always such a privilege, and Sahel Tuesdays is where it's at. Thank you so much for joining us, guys. We'll see you again next time.
Peace.